Hey YouTube, this is Mega Dweezil coming at you from the great Indiana wilderness, and I'm been watching this show alone, and man, it's great. I love it. This is kind of like I'm not sure exactly what qualifies people to be a survival expert, but you know, it's great. I'm not gonna for a moment comment on you know, how big anybody's balls are, or how I would have done it, because that crap is 20 years in my rear view mirror, and I have really no interest in if I was going out, it wouldn't be to Vancouver Island. My wife is from there, and she kind of explained to me that that climate is although it's interesting that they picture it as being like lethal, it really isn't. It's just miserable. It's cold and wet is about as horrible as you need to get, and it's about 40 degrees, and they get like 12 feet of rain a year on that end of the island, which is, I mean, God, I can't imagine. That by itself is a TV show right there, I don't give a damn if they're flying the guys in McDonald's. I mean, hanging out in that climate, and having to, build a shelter, because, as we're beginning to see, I mean, their clothes are like getting moldy and stuff, which will set up a rash, and give you a bad bacterial infection, then you got a fever, and, you're off the show. So, I don't know. But I do have some, I think like with most TV shows, there's a lot that we're not seeing here. I think that there are a lot of agreements and a lot of rules that were made beforehand, and of course these guys must have signed like massive liability waivers and non-disclosure agreements, because we're not hearing from anybody, even though all these guys are well back, we're not hearing from anybody exactly what happened out there, or who won. But my big question is, okay, I don't understand why it is, that, and I love preppers and survival people because they feed on this stuff, is like how it is that, that there's all these resources and how they would have done it. These guys had to go out there with a set of rules, I mean, like, yeah, it's Vancouver Island, but that's not the ass end of the moon. That's Crown land out there, or First Nations land, depending on where you are, and there's some of those lands are in dispute, but basically, there's rules on any place you go, and one of the rules is you can't hunt big game out there without a guide or a licensed accompanying person, resident. So my question is, okay, this thing is kind of shown as a bare knuckles brawl between, man versus nature, and no holds barred, and, you can do whatever you need to do. Exactly what can these guys shoot? Does anybody know? Because they all took bows, or I guess maybe there were a few that didn't, but, they all seem to have taken bows, and we haven't seen anybody use one yet, and we're like 6 episodes into this thing, and these guys are grubbing around in the mud for snails, which is giving everybody diarrhea, and nobody seems to be, out there pursuing the mighty elk or anything, which I imagine they've got on this island. They have their own species of elk, the Roosevelt elk, and they also have, their own species of wolf and their own species of marmot, all of which are like very, very protected. So you shoot one of these things with a bow and arrow, you're going underneath the jail. But the chances are, I mean, they certainly have got enough bears, and they've got a lot of deer too, as I understand it, and both of which you can eat, and yet nobody seems to have shot one yet. So this is kind of like, has always been my question about these survival shows, is exactly what are the rules, exactly what are people allowed to do, because in a real survival circumstance, you're going to do what, people eat each other. I mean, it's not an issue. But on these shows, it's kind of like, man against nature, and they don't tell you that except for, because I'm thinking, like, what with all the time we spend, reviewing different kinds of sexy knives and stuff, the early pioneers on this continent, of 15,000 years ago, they were doing this stuff with like chipped rocks, man, and you notice there's no mammoth around, so I don't have any doubt, particularly with guys like Mitch who are extremely well qualified, in primitive techniques, and I mean, this guy made a bow that would take a bear, in 6 hours with a pocket knife. I watched him do it. It's on his channel, Native Survival, which is a great channel. I'm a subscriber, but I know that these guys have got the capability to do these things, and we're not seeing any of it, and I'm imagining that's because there are a lot of rules governing this thing that we are not informed of. They want us to think that these guys are a lot more isolated and than they really are. That is not to say, okay, that they are not in the most miserable circumstances available. And I would be in no hurry to go out there, regardless of the money. But the fact is, there are rules. You can't kill people on TV. You can't allow people into circumstances that are likely to kill them on TV. And regardless of how much we might all love to see it. And if you take a 10-inch plank and run it across a swimming pool, and fill it with man-eating crocodiles, you're probably going to get, you can't take stupid off the table. I mean, you're probably going to get people that are willing to skateboard across that bitch, right? But, no, I don't imagine that you'd survive the liability suits. Now, if you filled the pool with, like, liquefied pig crap, you could do it, because that's just miserable, And that's where these guys are, Vancouver Island, miserable. Yeah, I can hardly wait for the next episode. This is genuinely great. But if anybody knows, because I haven't been able to find it anywhere, okay, what are the actual rules to this competition? What are they actually allowed to do? Because by law, I don't think you're even allowed to cut standing timber, and we see that they're doing that. So, if a deal was made, I'd love to know what kind of deal it was, and who they made it with. If anybody's heard anything on that. Anyway, don't worry, YouTube. Indiana's holding.